Hello, my name is Tony. I'm a fan of Michael Winner's 60s and 70s cinematic output. As a social satirist and commentator, a crowd-pleasing purveyor of mainstream exploitation flicks, he provided me with a skipload of lowbrow fun. Being a lowbrow kind of person, lowbrow fun is my meat and potatoes pal. Writer-director Winner, I'm the first to admit, lacked some finesse, social grace, prudence and restraint, which is all fine by me. He made up for it with a flair for gritty, grungy, dick-belting mayhem filmed in an often unsophisticated but always compelling and direct way. Some would say his style bordered on the amateurish or even downright artless and plain bad. I just think he wanted to punch the audience in the face rather than tickle it affectionately under the chin. He often seemed to dispense with unnecessary pleasantries and gentle foreplay. I quite like the honesty of that approach. Dirty Weekend was his penultimate film. It's based on a polarizing novel by a female author, Helen Zahavi. I haven't read it, I feel I should, but I've seen some of the reviews which seem to be evenly split between excitable praise and outright hatred. On the one hand, it's felt to be a hardcore, taboo-busting celebration of feminism taken to a challenging extreme. On the other, a pile of disgraceful trash that warrants binning. On the screen before you, there are some review sound bites by female reviewers. They fall into one or other of those two camps. The contentious nature of the thing must have sparked a gleam in Winner's eye. I can see what attracted him to it. I imagine when he read it, he lit up and thought, this is right up my street. Winner co-wrote the screenplay with the author herself, who he described affectionately as a possessed Jewish woman. So at least blame for that is shared. Before we proceed, some things to note, stuff I think is worth a mention in passing. The BBFC granted it an 18 certificate in cinemas for sexual content and violence, then banned it from release on home video formats for 2 years. Why? Well, for sexual content and violence, of course. I'm not sure how that stacks up. An 18-year-old could watch it in the cinema, but couldn't rent or buy a copy. There's something wrong with this picture, something I'm missing. In his autobiography, Winner mentions difficulties with funding, delays and problems caused by the theft of catering equipment during filming. He points to the risky but clearly much cheaper choice of casting two virtual unknowns in leading roles, but doesn't develop his thoughts and motivations for making the film in any depth at all. He gives no indication of what his aims were, other than to put a feminist spin on the death wish concept. He does quote a review from Company magazine who apparently decreed it the most empowering vision of femininity since Thelma and Louise, the most important release this year. From what I remember of Company magazine, I think he might be quoting accurately. Look at those covers then, tell me I'm wrong. Winner predictably doesn't cite any of the reviews that dismissed it as worthless, poorly made garbage, or proffer any rebuttal by way of explanation, but then I wouldn't expect him to. With that in mind, after I run through the narrative, the synopsis, the content, and when I reach some kind of conclusion, I'll tell you what I think about that. Bella, Leah Williams, attends a birthday party for a university lecturer boyfriend. She's so devoted she even bakes him a cake. As the party winds down, he says he has a headache from the booze and needs to go to bed and sleep it off. She returns bright and early in the morning with a surprise bottle of champagne, only to find one of his young students has spent the night with him. He then dumps Bella and is pretty bloody cruel about it. Bella goes to Brighton, rents a basement flat, gets a job working at home as a typist. She is spied upon by voyeuristic pervert neighbour Tim, Rufus Sewell, who makes obscene phone calls and physically threatens her with sexual violence. A local police detective, a friend of a friend, is no help whatsoever, and turns out to be another misogynistic sexual predator who tries it on with her aggressively. After visiting an Iranian clairvoyant, as you do in troubled times, enter Ian Richardson in brownface, he gives her a switchblade and advises her to defend herself. As spiritual and therapeutic as you could wish for. She is sort of reborn as an avenging angel. She's had an epiphany and a flick knife. First she breaks into Tim's home when he's asleep and violently beats him to death with a claw hammer. I'm watching the uncut German import DVD, there's no Blu Ray remaster, and it's truly vicious stuff, a lot more explicit than the BBFC butchered version. You might wince or turn your head a fraction, won't be the last time either. Up in her game, Bella decides she needs a gun. The local gun shop, which is run by sexist cult militia-type pervos, offer her an air pistol. On leaving empty-handed, a shady character who was previously lurking in the background offers to get her a real gun for 400 quid. He's a bit of a condescending woman hater. This pattern ain't gonna break soon. But as she'd emptied Tim's wallet after hammering him into the afterlife, she agrees to buy and ends up the proud owner of a loaded revolver. Dressing up to the nines, Bella heads out for an evening to a local hotel. Walking along, she incites much leering and lascivious attention from the male population, who have clearly never seen an attractive woman before. At the hotel bar, she is approached by the monstrously obese Norman, Michael Keel, a psychologist in Brighton for a conference. He seems to have body dysmorphic disorder in reverse. He thinks he's a looker. The world, on the other hand? She agrees to go to his room. Now, I know that these days so-called fat shaming is considered some sort of hate crime, but it wasn't the case in 1993, so I feel safe in saying this guy's naked carcass is probably the most repulsive thing in the film. The average billy goat would upchuck his granola at the sight. Listen, I'm a fat bastard, but he makes me feel like Slimmer of the fucking year. And this fleshy, scabby behemoth tries to shag Bella, and she lets him try. You may well feel physically sick. Anyway, he can't get it up, which causes Bella to laugh at him, which causes him to lose his rag and smack her in the mouth with a book. The assault gives Bella a fat lip and gives him an erection, and he asks Bella to bondage him up and do something about it, which she does. She ties him to a chair and murders him with a plastic bag over the head. Now at intervals in the background there are news reports of a serial killer leaving a trail of female victims as he travels from Scotland in the direction of the south coast. Is this leading somewhere? Wait and see. Bella has a chipped tooth from her encounter with Norman. She visits the practice of creepy dentist Reggie, David McCullum. After he's drilled and filled her tooth, that is, he offers her a lift home. Instead, he drives her to a multi-story car park and rants about how disgusting women are. He also infers to her that he is sexually abusing his 13-year-old daughter. Yet another degenerate devotee of the Church of Male Toxicity and Mass Misogyny. Seems to be a lot of them about in the Brighton area. He forces Bella to perform oral sex. When he leaves the car to take a piss, and after Bella vomits a mouthful of ejaculate in another pleasantly tasteful scene of Jane Austen-like romanticism, she starts the engine and flattens him into the poured concrete. Keeping Reggie's car, Bella decides it's time to move on before her luck runs out. When she drives into an alley to ditch the vehicle, she encounters 3 suited and booted estuary thugs terrorizing an elderly homeless woman. They are going to set her on fire for a laugh. It's like the Three Stooges reenacting the tramp beating scene from A Clockwork Orange. Bella shoots all 3 with her revolver, leaving the old woman to flash a toothless grin of feminine solidarity and start scavenging their corpses for plunder. Booking a train ticket to London, Bella has time to kill before departure. Not just time though. It's early morning and taking a walk along the pier, she is grabbed by a man and dragged into an amusement arcade. The man is the travelling serial rapist and killer from the news reports. We know this because he has a newspaper with his photo fit on the front page, which he brandishes at Bella. The flick knife from the Iranian clairvoyant comes in handy at last, and Bella stabs the living shit out of the guy. This isn't enough to stop him from being not quite dead, and he attacks Bella again. She knifes him up a bit more and throws him off the pier into the drink. Switchblade and empty gun chucked into the sea, Bella catches her train. In the compartment, a leering, drooling prick smarmily lights her cigarette. She smiles at him, a secretive smile which says, "Little do you know it, but I kill rapey-looking scumbuckets like you. Her crusade will go on." Dirty Weekend, a jokey wink-wink title that conjures up visions of a planned tryst by those lucky, swinging, liberated people with sex on their minds. Perhaps illicit, adulterous sex even. A bit naughty and salacious, and ooh, misses. Something for the weekend, sir. The title turns out to be ironic because although the film considers sex and sexual activities, it's a far cry from a passionate bunk-up in a hotel with the boss's hot PA. Nothing like that at all. Every man it is Bella's misfortune to encounter is an abuser, a sexual pervert, murderer, or rapist, or all of those things. Just like in real life. Wait, that's a gross misrepresentation right there. You mean it's not just like in real life? Oh no, that's right, it wouldn't be, because this is a fantasy, a fiction. While it may deal with some real life issues and complexities, it effortlessly boils them down to simple binary factors, black and white polemic. All men are pervo bastards and all women are helpless victims, until they reach their breaking point and arise like modern unrighteous Amazonian warriors to take their just revenge. Now you can't tell me that any feminists in the audience wouldn't have cheered. Hell, internally, even I did. I fucking hated those men, and they fucking deserved everything they got. I spit on your grave sells the same bananas, and I supported that lady all the way as well. Here's what I think, for what it's worth. I think Winner stared down the writing on the wall for a while. I think he strongly suspected or knew that his days as a movie director were numbered, and the end was coming sooner rather than later. I also think he saw this as his last chance to live up to his legend, be everything he'd ever been accused of being, revel in it, and rub it in the faces of the critics and sycophants, to raise a final two fingers to the elite snobs in the movie industry, engender an offence and induce an outrage one last time. A final statement to take this, you fuckers, a terminal poke in the eye and a brain stain for your effete sensibilities. I could be fantasizing, but that's what I think, or what I'd like to think. Winner's last jibe against so-called good taste. What I don't think is that Michael Winner was stupid or an idiot. The people who employed and funded him, though, might have been stupid and idiots. If they didn't know what they were likely to get, failed to do their homework, then they certainly must have been. I also don't believe Winner intended Dirty Weekend as much other than a gender-twisting parody of the Death Wish revenge movie cycle. It is unequivocal in its condemnation of misogyny and does edge towards some flicker of genuine feminist empowerment. I don't think it achieves that objective. It's too literal, socially and politically dead-headed, and insanely unsubtle. But I do think Winner aspired in that general direction. And I think this because I know that Winner was a lifelong advocate and supporter of both gay rights and the feminist movement, which may be a surprise to some who have seen his films. From them, you wouldn't get that impression. That's why it's imperative that we at least try to some extent to separate the art from the artist and the man from the day job. You know, like Anthony Hopkins isn't really a cannibal, right? We know that, don't we? When I was young, and so was she, Julie Burchill was a journalist for the New Musical Express, or NME. She was a hip young gunslinger blazing away with scathing wit and a cool acerbic style. She was, and still is, to my mind, an object of desire, a beautiful human being, and I still read her today. I see her name and I sit up, stop drinking and pay attention. She was a fan of the book and assessed Winner's film version thus: Martian, almost surreal. We all know Michael Winner is gifted with a sizable sense of humour. And then went on to praise Leah Williams' performance. Julie Burchill is a real woman, and nobody's fool. That sense of humour is the key to understanding Dirty Weekend. Yes, it is a cheap, sleazy, perverse, ramshackle, deliberately unpleasant and sometimes nauseating slice of mainstream exploitation cinema. It isn't what you'd call a good film by any stretch. It isn't Michael Winner's best work, a statement that will no doubt horrify those who are not fans and send them clutching their pearls and screaming to the hills. But it is uniquely absurd and very funny in places. Black-humoured as fuck. It's idiotic, irrational, farcical, sometimes carelessly shot with puzzling and disorientating low-angle camera views, and a music score by David Fanshawe that is either teeth-grating and imbecilic or whimsical and stupidly jocular. On this format, it looks way better and far less grainy and glitchy than I recall. Maybe steps were taken to stabilise the jerkiness and smooth out Winner's janky editing. I must confess to being attracted by... You're wondering what I'm going to say here, aren't you? British seaside towns in and out of season as film locations. All those fading, peeling and melancholic Victorian monuments of architecture and engineering, weathered down and bleeding out with an almost palpable sadness and grief for times gone by. They have a characteristic atmosphere, a jaded ambience of impending hibernation and despondency you don't find quite the same anywhere else. Right, I'm just off to blow my brains out. The setting of Brighton is one that appeals to me, is what I'm saying, and here it looks suitably glory-drained by time and neglect. I've seen Leah Williams' character criticised for being unlikable. Okay, true to contradictory form, I like Bella, and I like Williams' portrayal. She's quirky, sarcastic, flippant, clearly nuts, and those little slow-acting half-smiles she gives at key moments are killer. Her voiceovers are quite witty here and there. She's sexy, sure, but not in any authentically stimulating way. She's a perfect target for voyeurism because she's someone I find more fascinating to watch rather than someone I'd want to engage or interact with, if that makes any sense. An interesting gameplay of hers is her willingness to leave herself open to abuse and degradation at the hands of men, as if daring them to reject their base instincts and choose not to abuse and degrade her. When they do, however, it makes her decision, gives legitimacy to her actions. She gave them a chance. If they took it, would their lives then be spared? Well, perhaps so. Dirty Weekend ploughs the same fantastical furrow as a fairy story, minus the moral punchline and wisdom. A grim, dark, satirical parody of a revenge movie with the internal logic of a cement mixer and the intellectual function of a caramel donut. An urban fairy tale set at a seaside location, stalked by a quietly deranged princess, who will beat, crush, shoot and stab any man to death for his depraved, deviant and rapey transgressions. And in a strange way, that seems fair enough. And it seems fair enough because in this fantasy world, getting murdered for being a misogynist scumbag and chauvinist man-bear pig by some slip of a girl who fears no consequences is the fucking deal. That's what you get. So all I can tell you is, don't take it remotely seriously. I sincerely doubt Michael Winner did. Thank you as always for your time and attention. Do whatever you want to do next. Hit like, don't like, comment, subscribe, be a patron of my Patreon thing, make a financial contribution via the thanks button. Par for the course, I'll be back after a proliferation of scalding hot showers. Take care for now, pilgrims.